Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, if Obama orchestrated a coup, why is Trump in the White House? I'm Kodie, your host for this week, joined by Arthur and Joe.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome back to Propaganda Loves You for our Thursday episode. On Tuesday, we did talk a bit about a new executive order from the White House, as well as our main topic for this week, really just giving it a highlight. That's what we're going to focus on today, which is the Trump-Epstein controversy that continues to dominate the headlines. And, we did talk about this a little bit in our episodes from last week, but I did want to provide kind of just like a high-level timeline of different events that have taken place surrounding this topic. What we're focusing in on today is more just the narratives that are starting to pop up or what the administration is trying to refocus people on and get people to start talking about, because as of like the last week or week and a half, I don't even know at this point, the news cycle has been primarily dominated by Trump's connections to Epstein that continue to come out with both new revelations and then also with old things that are just resurfacing and looking way worse in, combination with some of the new revelations. So I'm just going to go through kind of like a rough timeline. In the 2024 campaign, Donald Trump had routinely kind of talked about like, oh, when we get in power, we're going to release like the Epstein files. We're going to release all these different, talks about a lot of files that release like JFK and whatnot and everything on this, but really use that kind of a way to stoke the base, right? And try and get further support by using that story. So after Donald Trump was elected, it was like February timeframe when the AG Pam Bondi basically gave out those binders, if you remember that, to all the right-wing influencers saying like, here's the Epstein files, everything on this, but it was basically just all the stuff that had previously been released up to that point. So it was kind of like to use the terminology of MAGA, it was basically a nothing burger that came out there. And so that started some initial backlash over like, what's the client list, which is what they were really looking for. And so in early July, that's when the Department of Justice and FBI started to put out new memos stating that there was no client list and that no additional investigations were needed, and kind of reaffirmed that Epstein died by suicide. This is what kind of started the ball rolling on all of the reporters basically asking Trump continuously about Epstein and him continuing to shoot himself in the foot by saying things like, shut up about it, or like, why are we still talking about Epstein? And then in interviews, Trump is basically saying, I think his one response was that, hey, we were briefed really, really short briefing on this from the AG. And then like that never said my name was in the actual files. And then like a week later was when it dropped that the DOJ had actually briefed Trump in May that his name was mentioned multiple times in the Epstein files. And so, like, since this has come out, the damage control move that the administration did was they went to unseal basically grand jury transcripts, which is not the client list. That's like grand jury transcripts. That's like the communication with the grand jury when they're deciding whether to indict or not, right? Like when they're making that decision to move forward. And so I think this was right around the same time that the Wall Street Journal dropped the birthday card that Donald Trump had wrote and sent to Epstein, which kicked off a $10 billion defamation lawsuit that Trump did against the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch. And then in between there, I can't remember the exact date for this, but they also decided to release all of the MLK files against the wishes of that family, I think. And then most recently on the 23rd was when Tulsi Gabbard came out, the director of national intelligence, held a press briefing basically saying that there was a treasonous conspiracy by the Obama administration to conduct a years-long coup against the incoming Trump presidency by promoting the Russia hoax. So that's just kind of like a timeline of events that have taken place up to this point. The one that I want to focus in on, and I've got a couple videos to show, is mostly around the Obama Russia coup hoax. But before I show those two videos, any thoughts on the timeline or this topic in general? I know, Joe, you weren't able to jump out of the last one, so I don't know if there's anything you got there. So
Well, yeah, I was just sort of thinking about it as you were talking, and how part of Trump's success as a politician depends on this widespread public belief, which I think goes across the political spectrum. Average people believe that there's a lot of corruption in government, that there's a lot of ways that people do shady shit and hide it, and that's true across the political spectrum. And so that assumption in the base of Trump supporters was a necessary part of his success. He had to stoke that assumption and use it to rally his supporters. And now you see it unraveling when he's not delivering on some of these things he promised, like releasing the Epstein list. And so I think this pivot to the Obama conspiracy is probably, I mean, obviously ridiculous, but the smartest thing his campaign has done in response to the whole Epstein debacle is to try to feed that base with something. You know, they want some evidence of corruption. And so that's the smartest move they've made so far, is to try to deflect with, oh, remember Obama? Remember how much you hated him? Remember all this stuff? Yeah, forget about everything else going on. Not to mention, like, what I hate about American politics so much is how insular we can get, and how all the drama seems to be within the United States. And at the same time, like, we're a massive global colonial operation. Like, there's still massive genocide in the Congo. There's still genocide in Sudan. There's still like 2 million Palestinians about to starve to death because of our policies and our support for Israel. All of this insulated U.S. drama is just distracting the world from all of those things. And that's the aspect of American politics that gets to me the most.
yeah, it's like we're so consumed by just everything that's put out here every single day that thinking about something outside of that's like, how do you, well, for one, like just the mental capacity, not like from an ability to think about it, but just like the amount of things that you can really think about, like the bandwidth that anyone has. But yeah, to both pay attention to what's happening inside our own country, and then also what does that mean, what's happening outside, right? Like that's a lot. That's a lot to try and balance or be able to do both of, for sure. Arthur, anything from your side that before I kind of like, I've got two videos that I kind of want to show.
My God, it's just ridiculous. I'm sure the list coming out is going to be like the top 100 DNC donors, and there's no mention like it's nobody Trump's associated with. Okay,
that's actually, yeah, I didn't even mention that in the timeline, but I think like this was just yesterday and today, maybe the day before that, but it was the reporting that the Department of Justice is now interviewing or has been interviewing Ghislaine. Is it Ghislaine? I don't know. I've heard her name pronounced.
I always thought the S was
say
silent. You just say Ghislaine.
Ghislaine.
Yeah.
What
Maxwell?
Who, I mean, I don't know if we've mentioned her ties to the Israeli intelligence service Mossad, but also something to think
Wasn't
about.
it her father, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Israelis have a history of using blackmail against politicians. Like, there's been recent evidence about them trying to use the Monica Lewinsky situation against Bill Clinton. Like it's a regular tactic they use to get what they want.
Yeah, I saw that it was like specific to Netanyahu and back like why we invaded Iraq, or like a big push for us to invade Iraq and do regime change in Iraq. I didn't realize how long Netanyahu has been manipulating the U.S. to do shit in the Middle East. Yeah, it's crazy. We didn't even mention the Maxwell piece and how she's basically been in prison for this as a co-conspirator, not waiting trial, but convicted of child sex trafficking. And so now has been talking to the Department of Justice for the last 2 days. And Trump, I think yesterday, came out and just wanted to remind everyone that he does have the legal authority to pardon Maxwell. I don't know why you would have to remind everyone of that, but also the like on Fox News, like they've started to pivot to Maxwell being a victim, and they're like saying like, oh no, not saying like this is for sure, but it's just, she's in prison and like they're punishing her because of Epstein. Like she could have been a victim in this whole thing. Like, so you see how quickly like that narrative is changing around her. I don't know. I mean, I guess like this whole thing to me is just, it feels like it's so obvious what happens next. Like there's going to be some sort of list that comes out from Maxwell that miraculously, Trump is completely exonerated and is no longer associated with any of the files, right?
Yeah,
I feel
the
like
guy
that's
who flew there
inevitable.
dozens of times on record.
Yeah. It has all the pictures of Jeffrey Epstein at his weddings, and yeah, there's so many videos, and like, yeah, it's just insane. Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors. Here at Victory Coffee, we believe in freedom, Jesus, and weaponized caffeine. That's why we're proud to launch our Treason Roast, the only dark roast aged in constitutional outrage and filtered through a RICO filter.
When the Epstein files dropped and there was no list, I felt betrayed. I poured a cup of coffee, treason roast, and remembered it's not about the list, it's about Obama.
You can taste the scandal. Rich hints of Benghazi, undertones of Seth Rich, and a full-bodied accusation of espionage that pairs beautifully with Fox and Friends.
Every bag of Treason Roast is patriotically flash roasted over burnt court filings and blessed by a retired Navy SEAL who once made eye contact with Roger Stone.
I sent some to my son in ROTC. He called me and said, "Dad, I believe again."
And this month only, every Treason Roast order comes with a limited edition thermos labeled Espresso Yourself Against the Deep State.
Caffeine content exceeds safe dosage. Not liable for treasonous outbursts, spontaneous chants, or minor coups.
All right. Well, I want to share these videos really quick. I've got basically 3 videos that I want to do. So the first one is Trump talking about this pivot to Obama coup and whatnot. And then I'm going to show the Tulsi Gabbard clip. These are all from, actually, I pulled them from Fox News because I think it's probably better to look at this from Fox, honestly, just because this is the unmodified propaganda. I don't know what you want to call it, but this is
It's
what's
like the original source. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like this is the narrative they want to push because they own it. And this is, totally. I like that.
Yeah. So let me share my screen. All right. Can you guys see okay?
Right. Oh, yeah.
From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay. I have nice pictures up. They came out of the vaults. They were in there for 100 years. This is much more beautiful. We have the Declaration of Independence now in the room, which wasn't here. I guess people didn't feel too good about putting it here, but I do. But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one look, he's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries. You've seen some pretty rough countries. This man has seen some pretty rough countries, but you've never seen anything like that. And we have all of the documents. And from what Tulsi told me, she's got thousands of additional documents coming. So President Obama, it was his concept, his idea, but he also got it from crooked Hillary Clinton. Crooked is a $3 bill. Hillary Clinton and her group, the Democrats, spent $12 million to Christopher Steele to write up a report that was a total fake report. Took 2 years to figure that out, but it came out that it was a total fake report. It was made up fiction, and they used that. Now, the one thing they weren't able to do was and probably the only thing I respect about the press in years is the press refused to write it before the election. They refused to put it in. The Steele report was a disaster. All lies, all fabrication, all admitted, and admitted fraud. She paid $12 million, and the Democrats, for that report to a wise guy named Christopher Steele. He wrote a phony report, and they wanted to get that report in before the election. And I'll tell you what, I talk about all the time, the fake news, how bad it is. But in this case, they wouldn't do it. They saw it, they read it, and they said, we don't believe it. And it was only after, substantially, like a month and a half after the election, that it got printed. And it was a big wisp. It was just like a bang of nothing.
This is like exactly talking to my grandpa. It's like, you start on one topic and then it's like 8 topics happen that you don't get to talk about at all, but he's just ranted about it. And then like he gets to the end and it's like, what was the question?
I was going to say, it's like, you ever listen to someone who's so incoherent that you feel like you're going to catch some sort of cognitive disorder, like just by trying to follow their train of thought? It just feels toxic to try to follow it yourself. You're like, I'm like, what is that brain doing? It doesn't make any sense. It's all over the place. He got distracted by the pretty pictures in the room and wanted to brag about the decor he chose. And it's like, oh yeah, I got to talk about Obama. Do you remember his middle name? Hussein? That's crazy. Like, all over the place.
Yeah, and at one point I wrote down a quote that he said, which I loved when he was talking about Obama. He said something like, I like to say, give it time, he's guilty. What? That's what you like to say? What does that mean? And then he also said Obama never, like the press was so nice to Obama. Remember when Obama wore a tan suit and the press was just like, it was unbelievable.
Fox News went crazy with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking
And
about
the
when he was
12 million
ranting. I was just like, Trump never got over when Obama roasted him at that one press correspondence dinner. He was with the NBC table and Obama was just roasting him. And then he was like, running for president.
Yeah, I think like this video to me was just, when I saw this one, all I could think was like, he's just merging all of his big lie conspiracies that he's had for years, right? It's like the Russia hoax, like, oh, this is all fake, like the whole Russia thing, woe is me, it's an attack on me. And then it's like, oh, the Christopher Steele. He said in here that, oh, it was admitted fraud. That's never been admitted fraud. It hasn't been like the guy that wrote it actually went into hiding a little bit because he was afraid of retribution and people coming after him. But anyway, yeah. So, and then like the way he basically had to be, I don't know, he was like the clown car of all of his major enemies. Like Hillary was in the room, Obama was there, Comey was there, Brennan was there. Like, which is funny because it's just like, I mean, if they were involved in the government at the time and there was a legitimate, which there was, Russian interference in our election in a number of different ways, then, well, yeah, if you're going to have the head of the FBI in the same room as the president, if you're talking about something like that. But anyway, yeah, that was my big takeaway from this thing. It's just like, that's where his brain's going. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like toddler, just a list of people who hurt his feelings, I think.
I didn't know that. I was kind of surprised. I saw some of the room, but his taste, it's like so gaudy. And it reminded me of Versailles, just like gold and gold and gold and gold. And like,
yeah,
it's like he loves gold and cherubs and McDonald's. Like those are his like favorite things. It doesn't make sense.
That was actually in South Park's episode that they did. They just kept making fun of him as being like a Middle East dictator. It was like everything was all gold and like all the pictures of him on the walls and everything. It was great. It was a fantastic satire. 100% on point. So anyway, this is the most recent pivot that they've had so far. Joe, like you said earlier, I think it's definitely what gets the base riled up the most. It's talking about Obama. It's talking about Hillary Clinton. It's talking about government abuses, perceived government persecution of him, and therefore trying to make that feel like it's persecution of everybody that supports him, right? But I do want to focus a little bit on the claims from Tulsi Gabbard. So the next 2 videos that I actually have, one is Tulsi Gabbard. It's another news clip from a Fox affiliate about what Tulsi Gabbard basically says. And then the next clip after that I want to show is just a breakdown actually from Renee Diresta. I think we talked about her before, but she was the one that helped run the Stanford Internet Observatory before it was shut down and did the original analysis on the 2016 election interference from Russia and basically was the one that presented that to Congress. So I'm just going to do these 2 back to back just because then it'll hopefully explain a little bit more about what Tulsi Gabbard is saying is, this treason versus what the truth is from some of these documents. or kind of like how that spin is working.
The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is referring Obama administration officials to the Justice Department for prosecution over the assessment of Russia's election interference back in 2016. Gabbard alleges that declassified documents showed that in the days leading up to the election, intelligence officials said that Russia was not trying and did not have the capability to influence the election using cyber means. Gabbard says after the election, an email was sent to intelligence leaders asking them to create a new assessment. One former Obama official says the move by Gabbard is just a distraction.
Tulsi Gabbard's been in the doghouse with Trump for a while now. This is her trying to get out of it. But everything she says about what we did is just false. It's just not true.
Now, here's what Gabbard says will happen next in the investigation.
Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, it is their responsibility to gather all of the evidence, both that we have released, the facts that have already been known previously, the information that will continue to come out, and move forward with this prosecution and these indictments.
Gabbard says that she believes that there's enough evidence for prosecutions and indictments, though she didn't mention specific officials.
All right, So that was the claims, right, from Tulsi and what she's saying here. So this is, as I mentioned, Renee Diresta. She put this on her Blue Sky account, basically as a response to what was being said there.
Hey guys, I'm on vacation, so forgive the weird background. But last night, Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's Director of National Intelligence, dropped a report claiming that Obama officials manufactured intelligence about Russian interference in 2016. She calls it a treasonous conspiracy, says she's handing over evidence to the DOJ to start investigations. So here's what you need to know. When we talk about Russian interference in 2016, we're actually talking about three separate things. There were attempts to hack voting infrastructure. So Russia probed election systems in multiple states, but didn't actually change any votes. There was the GRU hack. Russian military intelligence stole emails from DNC and the Clinton campaigns, then leaked them to influence the news cycle. And then three, there was the propaganda campaign, right? The disinformation, troll factory, troll farm. They used fake social media accounts to divide Americans, suppress turnout, and to boost Trump and to hurt Clinton. That was the data set that the social media platforms found. They turned it over to the Senate, and I and other people analyzed that a few years back. So all three of these efforts were part of interference in the 2016 election. Every major U.S. intelligence agency said so. A bipartisan Senate investigation said so. Even Trump's own intel leader said so until now. So what Tulsi's doing is she's zooming in on the first part, on the voting machines. Her new report points to an August 2016 assessment saying that there was no evidence of a Russian threat to manipulate the actual vote tallies through cyber means, which is true. The Russians did not actually successfully hack American voting machines. But that's also completely irrelevant because that was never the main story of Russian interference in 2016. Subsequent assessments that came out after that, which were, again, revised and developed as new information emerged, examined those other factors as well. So did the Senate reports. Tulsi, however, is using that August document to discredit all of the later work and to claim that the whole thing, all of it, was just cooked up by Obama officials to sabotage Trump. Even CIA Director Ratcliffe didn't go this far with his intelligence community reassessment of whether Russia had aspired to help Trump. That was something that he looked at a few weeks back. That reevaluation changed the CIA's assessment of that claim that Russia aspired to help Trump from a high confidence assessment to a medium assessment. What Tulsi's doing here is kind of building on that. This is the sort of second phase of this great retcon. What she's doing is not analysis. It's designed to confuse people. It's trying to turn well-documented foreign interference into just another deep state hoax. Maybe it's to shore up her own kind of rocky standing in the administration. Maybe it's to distract people from the Epstein story. I don't know. But the truth is, the truth hasn't changed. Russia interfered. And yet nearly a decade later, here we are with our elected officials and their appointees just trying to change history.
So the reason I wanted to play that is because, I mean, well, one, like Renee Diresta actually did all of the initial, she said in there, she was the one that did a lot of the research with her team on the interference in the first place. So it's about as direct of first person sources you can kind of get on what occurred and the analysis behind that. And so, yeah, I kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts on both the piece from Tulsi, what they're trying to do here, and then also your thoughts on the breakdown from Diresta, just to kind of give a little bit of a, well, at least give you where my head's at. I think the things that I focus in on here is what we've talked about in the past when it comes to propaganda and specifically like disinformation, how a lot of times the best propaganda or disinformation is the thing that has that kernel of truth, that has like portions of it are true. And that's what you kind of like anchor on as your cornerstone and then build your story really all around that. And so like the thing that sticks to me is like what Tulsi Gabbard is anchoring on, which is the true part, is that, you know, Russia didn't change any votes. Like they didn't physically change any outcomes, right, for the election. All the intelligence indicates basically that they attempted to access voting machines, but did not change anything on the actual day. And so like that part is true. And then I think the other piece that she's focusing in on trying to make this the main story is like there were revisions or asks for additional intelligence assessments or whatnot. And I think that is completely like, I don't want to say like standard, but that practice happens constantly when new information comes in. If people are creating an intelligence assessment on anything, I've had to do that in the past where you come out, you've got everything you know at the time, you put together an assessment, and then new information comes in and you do a revision, right? That's not some nefarious, crazy thing. And even at the higher levels, like if someone's asking for, hey, I mean, maybe this is the White House, maybe it's like, you know, Department of Defense, like senior officials are saying, hey, we know something's going on here. They can direct, like ask for briefings or assessments on things, right? Asking for an assessment does not mean that like this is a nefarious thing, right? This is just like common practice stuff that happens in the intel community and probably anywhere else, right? Realistically, like I'm sure like at a newspaper, like if someone's writing an article, like there are times when it goes through revisions or new information comes out and they have to do a redaction of the article and put something out, right? Like, so that's kind of where my head was going with this. It's like trying to use these little cornerstones of true information and then building the story around that to make it seem nefarious when all of this really is mostly standard practice and also very confirmed as far as the overall interference and Russia hoax goes. But yeah, that's enough for me on spiel on that. But any thoughts on just this entire thing right here?
I guess like the first thing I thought about with Tulsi is that like with propaganda, you know, it's like I mean, I guess, is it maybe a fallacy? I'm trying to remember studying fallacies here, and maybe it's a fallacy to strike down the speaker a little, but I just like thought, like, where's the credibility? Like, I remember Tulsi flew in like 2017 to go to Syria and meet with Bashar al-Assad, and like Russia Today covered it and was like, wow, Tulsi's, you know, they glowingly covered it. And then she just mimics all of the Russian propaganda in Syria and calls it like, all of it like regime change wars or, you know, whatever. Yeah. And then it's like Trump, obviously, like if you look into like the Dutch bank and how he's gotten like his loans and everything, like obviously he has strong ties to Russia and interests in like Russian oligarchs. And they both do. And now they're like, hey, Russia wasn't involved. And then, yeah, it's totally like just a disguise about like the Epstein stuff. So it's horrible. But yeah, they anchor it in some form of truth. It's just so bad.
Yeah, on that, I just respond to that real quick. So like when they named all of the different cabinet positions when Trump did initially, and he was like talking about like, it was probably a toss up for me between Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard for who I was least excited about or most concerned about like coming into the administration. And yeah, you're totally right, Arthur. Like Tulsi Gabbard, her connections to it's strange. You know, it's not clear to me if it's like legitimate connections to Russia and Syria or if she's just bought into like the disinformation so much and she just believes it. Like I honestly don't know what's the true answer there. But just to close that thought, like there's a guy, Christopher Goldsmith, that started a group called Veterans Fighting Fascism, and he's actually got a podcast that started around the same time as ours, I think called the Find Out podcast that he's on. But he was an Army intel guy for a while that worked for Tulsi Gabbard, and he put out an article on Tulsi when she was confirmed for the position stating like, yeah, she's like in a world of misinformation, like she daily like and believes like this stuff. And yeah, when she was also nominated, I think it was on Russian television, they just refer to her as like our girl Tulsi. And that in itself could just be a psyop, like just trying to like from Russia, right? Like whatever the case, like it's great news for Russia either way, whatever we think. Like if we think she's a Russian asset, good for them. If she is a Russian asset, good for them. You know, like it doesn't matter at that point. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always just trying to think about the perspective a little bit. Tulsi is a interesting person. Just if you look at her whole career, just like, I don't know, I just wrote down Tulsi Grifter on my notes because it just seems like she is a very ambitious person who, kind of like J.D. Vance, is willing to just throw out any prior statements they've made. Like, she was the deputy chair of the DNC in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, in this election cycle that she's now litigating or whatever. So, yeah, she's willing to go wherever gets her into power or gets her closest to power. And so it doesn't surprise me that I think it's like an ad hominem, like you're saying, Arthur, to attack the person instead of the message. But like, there's good reasons not to trust the messenger in this case and in most of Trump administration.
Her and Trump are like, how many zeros did you say?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like what I was saying earlier, that this pivot to the Obama story is like maybe the smarter move for the Trump administration to try to activate their base in some sense. But I also don't think it's going to work. I feel like especially younger Americans, even if they're on the right wing, this is old news. This was 10 years ago. You're talking about Obama. Like when Trump gets asked about Epstein, he's like, you're still talking about Epstein? You're still talking about Obama? Really? Like that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it's going to have teeth with the base in the way that they want. I think they're still going to demand answers about the Epstein list, and they're still going to be causing issues. If Trump wants to stay in power for longer, they're going to have to start resorting to more and more fascist means to do that. And I don't think they're going to be able to depend on even a modicum of a legitimate election in the future. I think it's going to be really, really bad for them. But yeah, all this stuff just limits and narrows our perspective on what's going on. Like the more we dig into the details and follow their trains of thought on this, the more we're like, wait a minute, what were we talking about a minute ago? What was going on? And that's what they want.
Yeah. And totally to your point about like future elections, this is like, they're like setting up the scaffolding for like anybody can interfere. And they're getting rid of all the experts around the election interference camp. So they're definitely setting it up for maybe Tulsi Gabbard, first female president. Come on. She got 98% of the vote.
I mean, it's, like got rid of all of the disinformation, like anything that's fighting that. But also, I mean, I don't remember if we talked about this on the podcast, but one of the things that Pete Hegseth did is he stood down all cyber operations that are defending against Russia, saying like that Russia's not a threat to our cyber infrastructure. And it's like, there's so much vetted like information out there, released information that like they have interfered, not just in the US, right? I mean, we spent an entire episode talking about Russian interference across all of like Eastern Europe, EU, like into the United States. I don't know. Maybe this, to me, it feels so obvious, but like to other people, probably not, that don't focus on it all the time. But I'm trying to think of like what's a good parallel here. I guess like Joe, like when you started really paying attention to Palestine and Israel and like all of the experts coming out and saying like, yeah, this is a genocide. It meets all the definitions of a genocide. I feel like the same way when it comes to like Russian interference, it's like very obvious. All of the experts are coming out. They're saying, yes, they've interfered. We have proof of this. And yet everything's just denying, it's just a straight denial from the government on it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the theme of running the country like a business. And I'm rewatching Mad Men with Katie right now, and they just had a merger. And so I'm thinking about what the Russia-US merger is going to look like and how they're going to sell it to us.
Are we going to do a land bridge from Alaska? Like, is that how we're going to do?
You remember Sarah Palin? She's coming back again.
Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
We believe America deserves better stories, better enemies, better distractions. That's why we launched Operation Redirection, our boldest narrative inversion campaign yet.
Look, Epstein was a problem. We hyped the files, printed custom binders, and even said the client list was on Pam Bondi's desk. Then we opened the files and oops, mostly black rectangles and paperwork from 2006.
The base flipped out. People were making memes with Trump on the list. So we said, hey, what if Obama did treason?
We reclassified a 2-page 2017 committee draft no one cared about, called it Explosive Proof, and pushed it across all channels Within 36 hours, cable news had pivoted, and conservative influencers stopped asking questions.
We replaced Epstein's name with Obama and watched engagement double. It's beautiful, like watching democracy go through a meat grinder made of vibes.
Operation Redirection is a tested, donor-approved technique for manufacturing scandals faster than you can say, "What files?" Want in? Donate $177.60 today and you'll get our exclusive Obama Coup Club starter pack, including 14 talking points, 2 Twitter bots, and a commemorative enemy of the state coffee mug.
May constitute psychological warfare. Donor discretion advised. Offer not valid in states with functioning ethics commissions.
I guess maybe like just a hypothetical for you guys to kind of like end this segment. To me, this whole thing, I don't necessarily think this was the plan. Maybe it was the plan, but like all of the continued denial of the Russia hoax, the 2016 election interference, 2020 election was stolen, like all of these things kind of like merging into one big lie at this point. But you got to believe the whole thing. And I think one or two pieces of that start falling apart. Maybe that helps the narrative just kind of fall apart in general. I don't know. We'll see. But if you guys were in the Trump administration, if you were a PR rep for Trump right now, what story would you try to pivot to if this one doesn't stick? Do you got any ideas? I guess what could come next here? Because in my mind, like once you start to threaten jailing Obama, I guess the next thing to do would be to follow through with that as a major way to distract people. But what do you guys think would be the next thing to do?
I honestly think they should drop the Epstein list. Maybe Trump's name is in it. And then like 5 minutes later, Trump comes out with the Area 51 files and it's like, oh, aliens are among us, And then he releases the JFK shit, some Sasquatch shit, like just all the conspiracy theories.
No, that's
I
good.
like that.
Yeah, that'd be juicy. I was just gonna say, like, the only realistic way to save his reputation at this point is to maybe radically pivot on foreign policy and just be super like Ron Paul isolationist, anti-war. You could even legitimately go after the Obama administration for droning U.S. citizens. Like that's something you could go after legitimately rather than all this weird Russia stuff. So I think if he did that, became a radically anti-war president, America's first means America stays out of the world's business, I think he could actually legitimately gain a lot of support.
So like if he actually just did what he said he was going to do when he was campaigning. Yeah.
But the money's overseas.
I mean,
so
he said a lot of other crazy shit while he was campaigning, and he's delivering on that. But that's all the stuff that people didn't listen to, right? So I guess we'll see kind of like what happens next here. I have really been enjoying watching Colbert's show ever since it's been canceled and his takes on all of this. I feel like honestly, like the Colbert Jon Stewart combo there, I don't know, maybe we'll see them in 2028 running for office. It was a joke for so long, and now I'm almost thinking like, oh geez, like, that might actually be the best shot we've got. One very last thing, did you guys notice when I was sharing my screen, so like for these videos, so these are both the two videos, right? On the right hand side, like just everything that's over here associated with these videos, like for the listeners, like I don't do a lot of YouTube rabbit holing, but it is just insane how much, like, it's just Fox News after Fox News talking about how it's like, Obama's coup from like Sky News Australia. I think that's a Rupert Murdoch owned company there as well. But just so many videos about like, oh, we've always known it was Obama, like going through all of this stuff. I'm just like, how do you, like, if you just put this on autoplay, if you had Fox News on autoplay, like, this is what you're going to start getting like after this.
But at the same time, scroll down, check out the comments, check out what the people are up to in the comments.
Yeah.
They're not satisfied.
Yep. That, which is really good to see, that especially on YouTube, honestly, like that's kind of surprising to me on YouTube. And
Fox News comment section is demanding the Epstein list.
Yeah. So I think that is quite the change. And I think similar on Truth Social too. Trump has been taking a pretty good drumming on his own platform from people. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But anything you guys want to plug, anything this week that you want to mention before we kind of sign off for the week? think from my end, the only thing that I want to mention, Adirondack Voters for Change. I was just checking out their website. They had a couple events recently, but I think every Friday they have a event that takes place in Lake Placid. And if you go to their website, you can see their calendar. Just want to notice this because it's cool. It's basically every Friday they've got an event where people can come to protest. So it's just like a standard thing, standard location. So if you're free on a Friday afternoon, you want to go meet up with some people from the Adirondack Voters for Change, you can check out their website, see where it's located in Lake Placid, go meet up with some people and start networking a little bit for anyone that might be also interested in seeing some change from our current government. And then one other thing to note, I think, 5051 and some other groups have been putting this online, but there are some large protests planned for August 2nd. So that will be the Saturday after this episode drops, August 2nd. It's going to be Rage Against the Regime. So if you go to the 5051 website, they have a link to find an event near you, which links to Political Revolution website, which can show you where all of the different events are. We'll include the Poll Rev link in our show notes for this. So you just put in your kind of like address, search for distance, and it'll show you like the different events that are occurring in the area that you can be part of. But that's the only kind of plug I've got this week.
The only one I got is we have a program here in Eugene called HIV Alliance, which does Eugene needle exchange and like syringe services. And I know we talked about this kind of like earlier in the first part, but they provide free sterile syringes, safe disposal, overdose prevention, training, Narcan, and hepatitis C testing. The programs contribute a lot to society and reduce infections. They build community-based programs, which this executive order wants to shift away from. It's especially focused among unhoused and marginalized people. So check out HIV Alliance and other, like maybe like if you have a syringe service program near you, check it out. They always need volunteers.
That's great. Love that. I don't have any organizations to plug or anything, just crazy times, easy to feel deranged and like a scattered mind is weighing you down. Just pause for a few minutes and try to breathe in a way that feels refreshing and comfortable, and give yourself the gift of a few minutes of just deep breathing every day. I think just even a few minutes will make you feel a lot better than you think. So don't sleep on the meditation.
That's a good one. Is that like, that should be like a t-shirt. Is that a t-shirt? Don't sleep on the meditation.
You can then purchase that t-shirt next week on the Propaganda Loves You store.
We do need to get that t-shirt store up and running.
Damn.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next week. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us.
If you enjoy the show, help us spread the word. Leave a rating or review and share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think would get something out of these conversations.
Your ratings, reviews, and shares help this show grow, and the more people listening, the harder it is for propaganda to win.
So until next time,
stay aware, stay safe, and remember,
propaganda loves you.